So, the bench is getting somewhat tidier. I actually need to clean these pistons out of the way because they're never going to get used again. However, today we are dealing with this. These are our new valve stem seals. They are Viton numbers, so we'll be trying to get them on today. However, look at the head. It's had a 7,000 skim. Obviously there's a wee touch of a warp on it, so the guys wanted to make sure that was alright. It has been pressure tested. We are good. So it is now time for us to chuck it back on the car. However, it needs a lot of work first, naturally. We need to take each one of the valves that we've taken out, lap it back into the seat, reassemble the valve springs, collets, put the new stem seals on. Yeah, times 24. So, the first thing we need to do is blow it down, because as you can gather, it's not actually been cleaned yet. This is the 1JZ oil pump. Now you'll note for an oil pump, that's a pretty meaty thing. That's because in typical Toyota fashion, they have completely over-engineered this. It incorporates the crank seal, half of the sump mating face, the crank angle sensor, all of this is all one part of the oil pump. So the good part is, when you buy a replacement, all of that comes as the replacement, well, except the crank sensor and all that sort of stuff, but the whole housing is the replacement for the oil pump. That's good, but what I want to do just before we go just ordering a replacement and chucking it on, I want to see the last bit of diagnosis in the engine, not that it really matters, what nick the oil pump's in. So this is the strip down. Maybe not. Quite annoyingly, these are Japanese industrial standard Phillips screwdriver heads, and they are roasted. So there's really only one way to properly take these out. Bearing in mind that we don't need to reuse them, we can get a bit brutal. Okay, so this is our back casing off of the oil pump. Let's have a look and see what's involved. Now, an oil pump's a pretty basic thing. As you can see, we've got an inner gear and an outer gear. They sort of mesh together. You'll note that they also sit offset, so that's how it does the pumping. When this spins around, they mesh together, and as they mesh together, that pulls oil up, pressurizes it, and pumps it around the engine. Pretty cool. The actual teeth of the gear sets look really good. Now that says to me that it's not pulled up big chunks and broke things off of that. On the outside faces here, you'll notice that we've got some light scoring. Now what that probably means is if bits of debris have come up, they've maybe not damaged the teeth because they've still had clearance to get away with it, but they've worked down to the side faces of these gears and they've scored them between the gears and the case. Now looking at the back face of the case as well, you'll note here, probably on that bit there, there's some corresponding scoring as well. That's not great. It's probably okay if you couldn't get an oil pump, you put that back in and get away with it with maybe a marginal drop in oil pressure. However, for us, we want to make sure we've got a good strong engine. I'd be replacing that anyway. Any damage in the teeth though, it's pretty much game over. It's not actually as bad as what I found on the top side, but there is some light scoring just visible on that face too. Anyways, we're in the bin, so let's move on. Front oil pump and crank seal on. Rear cover and crank seal on. I've also added the timing belt pulley just because, you know, I don't want it blown away in the wind. But we now have that frame, that base I was talking about for getting the sump on. So let's put the sump on. But before we fit the sump, we need to chisel out all the sealant that sits in these wee valleys. The valleys obviously helping the sealant do its job, because the whole lot needs to be spotless before it goes back on. There have been many mind-numbing jobs like this on this Supra build. Something tells me this won't be the last either. But it's quite good because you do these wee therapeutic numbers, doesn't take a lot of brain power. It gives you time to just think, stop, decompress, almost meditate, if you will. So I was thinking about something earlier on, right? So I'm 40 years old, and I am of the generation where Fast and the Furious was out around about when I was just kind of starting my driving career. And like most people, you watch it and it inspires you to some extent. I get inspired to go and stick neons in my car though, and drag race for pinks. It was the wee garagey scenes. I was like, whoa, check that out, man. I wouldn't mind a bit of that. Building up a 1JZ engine, do more than it should have done from factory. And when I watched that, I wished I had the knowledge, the brain power, the understanding to go and do something like that in real life. Of course I didn't, I was like 19. And I barely understood the concept of lefty loosey, righty tighty. Life, like everything, passes with great pace. And I find myself sitting here at 40, actually doing that very thing. I am building a Supra engine. That's not cutting me. It's quite cool though. I now know how to do all those things that person half a lifetime ago really wished they were able to do. It would have been nice if it cost a bit less. But, well, anyway, out of my head and into yours. Alright, hello. How's it going? Not bad. The sun's come up alright. Yeah, it's not bad, eh? Yeah, looks good. I mean, have you, like, went to town on this properly, or? No, we're just giving that a clean up, because we've got a full engine to build and don't want to be wasting time on a sump. Well, yeah, that's what I thought, it's just a sump, so we don't need to spend hours and hours cleaning it, do we? Well, no, of course not. Yeah, just a sump. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It does look really clean though, it's come up really well. You sure you haven't done anything to it, like? No, just, you know, clean the holes out, get the old silicone off, and yeah. This looks alright, doesn't it? Get a smell in the air, like, you know, that sort of sulphury way you get with aluminium that, you know, can I suggest maybe you've wire brushed the whole thing? No, why would we waste time wire brushing the whole sump? I mean, that's what I thought, but it really does look like you've went into every single nook and cranny of that and get every single bit of carbon off it, and you know, you've properly spent hours on that sump, haven't you? Right. You know, nobody will ever see this. Ever. No. Oh no. But can we put it in the car now, yeah? it is time for one of the most challenging episodes I've ever done, and that is making lapping valves interesting. Right, what we're quickly going to start to uncover is why I've numbered all these valves. Right, I flipped the head on its side because these guys aren't ferrous, and when I drop it in, I can't mag pen it back out without being able to poke it from the other side. Anyway, my problem, not yours. If you look at this valve, you'll see that it's got a number of angles on the end of it. Now, those angles are precision, and they are required to match the same profile of angles on the head. That angle alone is what gives 150 psi of compression lock against the pistons. If there is any gap, any misalignment, anything that stops that being a clean mating face, you don't get compression, and it's a big factor when you're building an engine. So if these valves have been out and nothing has been changed on the head and we're putting them back in, it's a pretty good chance that they're going to be okay. More or less match exactly where they were before. However, now that I've had them out and inspected the faces that they mate to, I'm not really that happy with it. If you look really closely, and I'm going to try and get it to pick up with the camera, which it won't, you will see here that we have some black marks around about this mating face. And what are those? Carbon indentation is not nice polished metal that's going to give me that nice mating face. So what we're going to have to do is relap these valves. Now I'm happy enough that it's probably just a wee bit of carbon that's maybe indented in, and it's not going to need remachining. So lapping is going to be the order of the day. Well, a typical lapping kit looks a bit like this. You get a tube of paste, this is coarse, and you get another tube of paste, which is fine. You start with the coarse, that cuts out all of the grit and horrible nonsense and more or less smooths the face off. Then you wipe all that off and you move to the fine, and that gives it the nice polish and the good seating face. And you do it with this. Once your paste's on the face, you slide the valve in, stick that on it, and you spin it back and forward over and over and over again until you're done. 24 times. You better believe we're doing a montage, because that's about all I have to say about this. Let's go. That is the first 4 valves for cylinder 6 lapped in, and don't I feel smug? Except I don't. So if you take a very close look, you'll see that this side is the intake side and this side is the exhaust side. So that's the exhaust valves and that's the intake valves. The big valves are the intake valves. So I'm not entirely sure at what point my brain went but it clearly went because if we walk over to the block, you will see that if we project the exhaust valves being here and the intake valves being here, you can quite clearly see they're back to front. So I've got a number of choices here and only one that's going to work. These need to come back out. Right. Right. My rage has subsided enough now for me to talk about what I've just done. And what I've done, boys and girls, is made a mistake. And what I've always guaranteed in this channel is, if I make a mistake, I will own up to it and tell you why, so that you don't make the same mistake. And the mistake I have made here is I have not paid attention. I have looked at these, I've made an assumption in my head, And I'll be honest, I didn't really pay attention to the head or verify it and double check it before I chucked these pistons in. And what's happened there is I've made a massive cock up. However, it could have been far worse, because if I put the head on and turned the key, those valves would have rattled in and not had the clearance. So yes, I have eventually went and double checked my work. Late for some, but not too late for me. It's given me more work to do, obviously, but it's not the end of the world. And that is the key to this. Take your time, and if you make a mistake, remedy it. So, how am I going to deal with this? Because it's not in the Toyota manual. There's 4 hours of my life that I'll never see again, but we're now back to where we were, except all the pistons are the other way around. Now we can get on to more interesting things. Yeah. Well, I said interesting, that's a broad expression. Okay, more valve lapping. 24 valves lapped in, my hands can neither clench nor open wide, so I am finished for the moment. Next up though, we definitely have some things to do to the head before it can go in the car. For example, we've got to assemble all the valves, we know that. I also want to do a bit of a leak down test in this, mainly just to make sure that lapping I've done here is actually going to hold compression. So we'll touch on that to start the next episode. What else? Well, I need to go and buy more things, specifically ARP bolts to get this head onto the engine, and some other bits and bobs. However, at the next episode, I hope to have a fully assembled engine. That's fun. In the meantime, thanks for tuning in. If you just found this, like, subscribe, bell, do all that jazz in the bottom. If you want to support a bit more than that, patreon.com/toolsandtrack, mega helpful. And until the next time guys, drive safe.